I'm going to introduce our presenter for today, and that is Lisa Wallace, a Senior Security Advisor with FireMon. It is great to have Lisa here. She's a veteran presenter and always is fantastic. So, Lisa, I am going to give this over to you, and I hope your connection is better than mine. You have the floor right now. Take it away.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, no matter where you happen to be hanging out. As I said, my name is Lisa Wallace. I'm FireMon Senior Security Advisor. What does that mean? That means I talk to our customers, clients, and friends about FireMon from a cybersecurity perspective. Not just how do you do the thing, but how do you do the thing to improve the security of your environment? How can we help you with that? So the fun thing here is we're here to talk to our retail friends today. I talk to a lot of people in retail. The joke around the office is I will talk to anybody about anything. So let's go ahead and get started. This research is from Forrester and IBM. We have seen a 41% increase in cybercrime in the last couple of years. 41%, that's phenomenal to me. The average cost of a data breach is $4.45 million. You're going to go to yourself, hey, crazy lady, my company isn't that big. But let's say you have a smaller incident and it still costs you $100,000. That's going to be an impact. What is making up that cybercrime? Again, I talk to a lot of people, and I actually have a breaking one that isn't on the slides because it's so recent. I was talking to a friend of mine. We're seeing ransomware still. We're still seeing people click the link. Important thing about ransomware is what are your compensating controls? If someone clicks on a link in their email and they download some ransomware and they encrypt their computer, now their computer is bricked, look at the rest of your estate. Look, what can that computer get to? That computer should be able to get to printers, should be able to get to their personal file shares, shouldn't be able to get to the whole server infrastructure or anywhere your backups are hanging out. I talked to a lot of clients, as are you segmented? And they said, yep, our stuff's on different VLANs. That's not effective segmentation. And if you want to have some conversations, we're going to go through my contact info at the end. I'm happy to talk about this stuff. A denial of service. What happens if your website's not functional for a day? If you are a more virtually oriented business? Physical attacks. What if somebody gets into your location, puts on a skimmer, and they're snagging all of your customers' credit card numbers? Your credit card vendor's probably going to catch on to that at some point, and then you're going to have additional possible penalties under PII or PCI. You're probably also going to have you may pay higher fees for your credit card processing. Stolen credentials. If you go ask about 20 of your customers, your friends, and I have this conversation with my friends quite frequently, don't use the same password every place. If stolen credentials are used, you're going to get that charge back, and you're going to have an impact there. Supply chain. How do your vendors get in? How do you interface with your vendors? What compensating controls are around them? Social engineering. If somebody walks into a retail store and says, I'm here from XYZ, I need to look at this thing, and you're carrying a clipboard and wearing a jacket, are your employees trained not to let them? And then the breaking news one that isn't even on the slides is talking about gift card fraud. This actually happened to somebody I know in the retail industry. They had it. Was in a restaurant with a friend of mine a couple weeks ago, and he bought a gift card at the restaurant, wanted to use it at the restaurant. They said, no, sir, I'm sorry, you can't use it for 24 hours. He was not happy. And then I'm talking to another friend, and I discovered why. This person's in a different kind of retail, but they were having a situation where they were having people get compromised credit cards through whatever means they got them, picking up a gift card, loading the gift card in line for the register with a stolen credit card, going to the register, using that stolen credit card, gift card, buying something, leaving with something, and they were out of the store before the fraudulent charge was disclosed to be fraud. So their compensating control is now the same as my friend ran into in the restaurant. You can't use that card for 24 hours after you purchase it. So everything, it's like whack-a-mole sometimes. Everything we're thinking of, they're thinking of something different. We're going to concentrate on breaches here today a little bit because fundamentally FireMon is network security policy management. We're looking at your network devices, your firewalls, your routers, your switches, your SD-WAN, your various infrastructures. What does it cost you? What's a breach cost you? And there's cost here beyond money. Obviously financial. Recovering from a breach, doing all the notifications, doing all your due diligence, doing all the things that the regulators say that you have to do is going to cost you. You're going to have those chargebacks. You're going to have the financial loss, whatever fraud happened as a result of that. Reputational damage. I know it's been several years now. Everybody's tired of hearing about the Target breach, but I still know people who won't shop at Target. I'm not one of them. I got a Target habit. Legal and regulatory consequences. Is PCI going to come knocking? Are you going to be sued? Is there going to be some type of legal challenge to you? Operational impact. You find the breach. You've got to figure out what happened. You've either got to get an outside vendor, which again, you're going to have some financial ramifications there. You bring in an outside firm to say, we had a breach. We need to know what happened. So we can not only make sure that the breach doesn't persist, that hole is closed, doesn't happen again, and to track back what was potentially lost. Or you've got your people doing it, all hands on deck. I've seen people not sleep for a couple of days. That's an impact to your people. Customer impact. Are your customers going to distrust you? Hey, XYZ had a breach. I'm going to throw this out there. I got an email from Dell last week. Dell had a breach. Your information's gone. Proprietary information. We'll talk about this a little more later, but I talk to people. Most people concentrate on ingress, what's coming into the environment, how people can get in, but you also need to look at egress, what's going out. What's going out not only from a breach, but potentially from a disgruntled employee. You're going to have additional higher security costs. However that breach happened, wherever that hole was, you got to plug it. You may need new technology. You may need to update technology. You may have some technical debt. A situation where something is older, you know it's not done well, but it's a core part of your business and it works. You come in every day, it works, it's reliable, it's stable. So you haven't updated it. You haven't looked at it in a while. That's going to accumulate in some technical debt you're going to have to clean up. And then you've got the impact on your teams, particularly when you're in retail. If I get the email that my favorite store down the street has a breach, I'm going to be okay. But people are people. Your front lines people are going to take the impact of that when people coming in. What's going on with you people? Your people in the office are going to take the impact of that. There's going to be new processes. There are going to be procedures. The people doing the investigation, the people that are facilitating your outside vendor, if you have an outside vendor doing the investigation, there's going to be a huge employee morale impact here. So what are we going to do to stop this? Patch all the things. I was having a conversation with a couple of our engineers just within the last couple weeks. We're seeing a lot of firewall vendor has a hole. There's a 0-day out. This is already being exploited. There's I've got thoughts on 0 days and people that release active exploits without giving vendors time to respond. But they go out there. This happens. Our conversation was kind of interesting. It was a chicken and egg kind of conversation. Is it that the devices are being exploited more? Is it we're hearing about it more? And I think it's a little bit of both. I think 20 years ago, you could pick one or two firewalls. Boom, that's it, you're done. Now there is a breadth of firewall devices in the landscape. They've got different kinds of levels. They've all got their own operating system. They have to be updated regularly. You start throwing in routers, switches, load balancers, SD-WAN, virtualization, all the things. Now patching is more than a full-time job. And it's easy for it to fall by the wayside. Risk assessments. I know they're not fun, but do them. What I find, risk assessment, for those of you who haven't done one, get normally an outside firm. They'll come in, they'll get all your documentation, they'll look at your business practices, they'll do some interviews with your in the office team and your out in the wild team. the ones that are in your stores actually handling the items. What they're going to do is they're going to look at your documentation. They're going to look at the answers to those interviews, and they're going to look at what regulatory guidance you fall under. If you're retail, you got PCI somewhere. Depending on what other sphere you're in, you may have other compliance frameworks. And what I find when we do these is that people fall into one of three buckets. They're doing things great and they have everything documented. And that is probably less than 10% of the time, easily less than 10% of the time, where everybody's doing everything right and they've got it all documented and it's all up to date. The preponderance of what I see is people are doing most of the things right and they've got about half the things written down. They've got about half of them documented successfully. Documentation is nobody's favorite thing, but it's important. You need to be able to prove when something happens and the regulators come knocking on your door and say, you had a breach, show me your stuff. You need to be able to prove that you're doing the things you need to be doing and that you can document you're doing them. You've got it in your policies and procedures and you can document and you can show that it happened. Encrypt where you can. Encrypt the things. Look at what cybersecurity frameworks. Again, most of you in retail, you've got PCI somewhere probably. You're handling money. But outside of your PCI network, what are you looking at? Are you using NIST? Are you using CIS? Do you have an incident response plan? What happens when something happens? Similar to your regular documentation that you're going to go through with those risk assessments, this should be a living document. Go through it. And then what is your process? Run through, do a tabletop, do some internals, sit people down at a table. Monitor, how are you looking for things? How are you finding the things? And what are you going to do when it happens? The more you can close that loop, the better off you're going to be. Then we talk a lot, and again, we'll throw out Target. I could throw out several other examples, but the big one everybody seems to know. Vendor management. What's your thorough due diligence? Get your vendor's risk assessment. SOC 2 is not an exhaustive risk assessment. Get a risk assessment from them. Get what they're willing to share for you. If it's a software vendor, great. What software do you have? When was your last penetration test done? Show me that documentation. Do you have a vendor review process? So anybody that is coming in and doing things, or anyone who you are depending on for the core of your business, this is not retail, but this actually happened in my local hospital. They had a vendor not close a hole. Patient information got stolen. The regulators don't care that it was the vendor that created the hole. My hospital's on the hook for that. You're going to be on the hook for that. If you need to give them direct access, limit it. Limit it to exactly where they need to go, when they need to go there. They're going to tell you it's a pain that I have to go ask John Smith when I do this thing. You could just give me access. I don't care that it's a pain. You do not need to do that hands-on. You can get that report from someone. We will provide that to you. MFA, multi-factor authentication, monitor what they do. Monitor. You should be looking at the logs of your vendor access probably at least as diligently as you look at everything else. I would say in a lot of cases, you need to have a higher level of visibility on those. And then again, in the incident response plan, we talk about doing a tabletop, sitting down, running through things. One piece of advice that I give people is if you're going to do a tabletop and your incident response plan says, when this happens, I go to the vendor and I get my logs, go get the logs. If you've got a contract with your vendor and it says, when we have an incident, they have a contractual obligation to provide us the logs from the system within 24 hours, go get them. I've had it happen probably more often than not, probably about 80% of the time. When I run through a tabletop with someone and I give them this advice, go get the logs from that vendor. Well, our contract says, go do it. Do it once a year. You may run your tabletops more often, but at least once a year, ask the vendor for what they're contractually obligated to give you. In one instance, we moved that to different storage. You can't get that for 72 hours now. Well, if you're in the middle of a breach, time is of the essence. Your contract says you're supposed to have those logs within 24 hours. Now you can't get them for 3 days. In one instance, we never got them. The vendor was not able to provide them. Catch those things in your incident response planning. Don't catch them when you actually have a problem. PII. Personally identifiable information. Personally identifiable information. I didn't have enough coffee this morning. What are you doing to protect that? If you look at like the Ohio protection, the Cybersecurity Protection Act in Ohio, they say the cybersecurity program for retail should comply with PCI and another framework. They believe that is the bare minimum of due diligence. Make sure you're adhering to those standards. Make sure you're doing the compliance audits. Make sure that you're doing those audits internally. You have to do PCI every 6 months. Make sure you're looking at it a little more often. Make sure you're looking at whatever framework you've chosen as your secondary. Privacy impact assessments. What is going to be the thing that you're going to do if something happens? Again, where can you encrypt? Where can you have MFA? Where can you make sure you're enabling TLS? CCPA, California Consumer Protection Act, they are the standard a lot of states are looking for to protect that data. PII is anything that can be linked. It's 2 or 3 data points that can be linked to your household. They've got regulations that say, here's when we can obligate you to delete that. We can terminate our relationship and we can get rid of that. If you're not in California, go look at CCPA, because there are a lot of other states with legislation that is pending, and they're using that, and they're using the Ohio legislation as something to model on. It's easier to ride on the back of something that's maybe already been through a few legal challenges than roll your own from the beginning. And again, train your people. None of us are hiring lousy people. They're doing the absolute best they can, but they don't know what they don't know. Make them aware what PII is. Make them aware of their obligation to protect it. Intellectual property. What is the keys to your kingdom? Like I said, I did a fair amount of risk assessment work, and I would walk into a company and say, okay, tell me where the things that are most important to your company is. Where does that information reside? And then from a FireMon standpoint, what firewalls are protecting that? What network devices have access to that? And I'm always kind of surprised the number of people that don't readily know. You should always know where your most important information is. You should know what the proprietary information with regard to your business is hanging out. You should know what's protecting that. Those firewalls, routers, switches, SD-WAN, whatever you're using to house that information, to protect that information, that should have the highest level of oversight you've got. What is it? Where is it? Look at what can get to it and look at what can get out from it. Look how it can leave. Where can it go? If I had a disgruntled employee, or if I had a vendor with inappropriate access, what can they get to, and can it leave my virtual building? Can it leave the structure of my network? It's as important to look at egress. What can get out is what can get in. And I think that's a step a lot of people miss. Access controls. Somebody in accounting is going to need access to the financials, but what else do they need access to? Least privilege. Everybody in the building does not need to be admin on the computer. People that are working on your firewalls, routers, switches, they should have a secondary admin account. They should not be using their admin account for the day-to-day. What have you got for DLP, data loss prevention? Have you got something that shows if somebody from accounting accidentally, downloads the spreadsheets, got a bunch of credit card numbers, social security numbers, some kind of PII, some kind of protected information, they accidentally download that and put that on our home drive instead of on the protected accounting share? Do you have something that's monitoring for that? And then logs. Nobody likes logs. But again, it's like documentation. You need to be looking at those. If you don't know what's going on, you don't know what's going on. Again, training your people. I was kind of hesitate to say this one, but I am going to say it. If you end up with a disgruntled person and something leaves the building, part of your onus is going to be, did they know? And if you can prove they went through employee training that says, don't let our stuff leave the building, that's going to be another data point for y'all. You're going to know it's left the building. So we've talked a lot about what to do, and we've talked about it at a high level. And I've talked about a lot of things that are not strictly FireMon. Like I said, I've been in cybersecurity for over 20 years now. Everybody gets a dose of cybersecurity with their FireMon. I can't help it. But how can FireMon help you here? Network Security Policy Management, NSPM. When I was doing firewall management, I had Palo Alto and Checkpoint and F5 load balancers and Cisco routers, and I forget what, I logged in 5 different consoles to do anything. If I needed to look at something, if I needed to say, hey, I'm looking at that egress, what can leave the building? I got to log in 5 different places to do it. That's how I ended up being a FireMon customer, to be honest, because I can look at all my rules in one place. I can look at them. Rule documentation. PCI. Talked to a client. He said, we need to do PCI every 6 months. We do it with spreadsheets. I love Excel, probably more than a lot of you. But there are better ways to do things in spreadsheets. This is a 6-month cycle. We go through our PCI. We get everything ready for the audit. We submit it. We wait a week and we start again. It's a 5-month and 3-week process to go through that with Excel. Automatic rule documentation, automatic rule lifecycle management, the rule review. You can automate that. You can do it a lot easier. Change detection alerts. Help a lot of people with this. If there is a part of your network that is your PCI space and you've got another network over here that is protecting your keys to the kingdom, the most important part of your business, nothing should change in that space without you knowing. Let's set it up so that if something does change in that, you're going to get an alert. You're going to get an email. Reporting. When it comes time for audit, PCI auditor comes in, whatever framework you're using, the regulatory people come in, you got to report. Back to the whole risk assessment, what you can do is it goes as far as you can demonstrate you do. From an audit perspective, as a client, I got far fewer questions from my auditors on something that was an automated, repeatable process. I got my rule documentation. I've got my FireMon reports firing. SOX, we were publicly traded. SOX reports went out 5th of every month. Those fired off automatically. There aren't going to be mistakes in that. I almost hate to say this. There aren't going to be mistakes in that, like there could be human error in my Excel spreadsheets. It can happen. I am human. So you've got a reliable, repeatable, automated process. Auditors are familiar with us. They're familiar with the space. Access path analysis, APA. APA is cool. If I need to see, can I get out here from my protected network to the internet? I can run APA. I've got all my network devices in there. I can put in my start point, my end point, my port, and I can say, can I get there from here? Comes up green if it's a yes. If there's a rule blocking it, it's a no. If I physically can't get there, quote unquote physically, because the traffic doesn't work, then I'm going to do that too. Again, we can do that rule review. We can put some guardrails around things. We've got assessments for PCI. We've got assessments for other framework. We can say before you put that rule in, hey, you're going to violate PCI here. You're putting in Telnet, at which point I'm going to question what you're up to. But we're putting in Telnet, and if you put Telnet on the PCI network, an unencrypted protocol, the auditors aren't going to like that. We're going to give you the ability to flag that and stop it before it gets there and before you've got a potential regulatory consequence, as well as having Telnet hanging out. What do our customers say? What do our clients say? It takes about 90% less time to do your changes. So to go back to my SOX example, we would do our SOX reports and it would take 2 of us half a day to go through our SOX firewalls, compile the information that our compliance lady needed. We set up FireMon. We set up that SOX report. We said, send this to Barb on the last business day of every month. She didn't have to harass us for our reports. She got her reports delivered in her email box. We got back 8 hours of man time. And somebody got cookies, and I may or may not be bitter about this because it was not me, but somebody got cookies from Barb for setting that up. So your people are going to have more time. Well, we don't want to eliminate your people. What we want to do is we want to give them more time to do the things that you can't automate. And it's going to be accurate. I used to spend 8 hours a week. Yes, 4 to 8 hours a week on CAD, change control board. Spreadsheets. Here's the change. Out of my 800 and some odd devices, did I hit all the devices? Did I hit too many devices? Am I making the change everywhere it needs to happen? We've ingested that rule base. We're going to tell you, hey, you don't need a rule over here. You've already got a rule over here. Over here, you've got a rule, but you need to add a new destination. So you're going to eliminate some of that human error. Policy manager, how we're going to do this. Enterprise scale. I've got clients with 3,500 firewalls. Real-time change. We're getting change notifications from the devices. We're getting syslog from the devices. We're going to know usually within 5 to 15 minutes tops if a change happened on a device. You can customize. You want to play with architecture maps, hit me up. You can customize the way it rolls out to your geolocation preferences, how your company's set up. You're not welded to one architecture. And you can search everything. API first. We do a lot of cool things with our APIs. I do a lot of scripting with our APIs because it's fun. We've actually got clients that don't log in. They've got a service account. They use the APIs from FireMon to get the information they need to bring it into their other platform, and they get that. Team teases me. I hate the phrase single pane of glass. I prefer single lens, but they get the single lens to what's going on with their IAM solution, what's going on with FireMon. They use those APIs, they bring that all in, and they see it in one place. They're making their life easier. So now their people, instead of managing consoles and managing devices and logging into their Palo and their Checkpoint, their F5 and their Fortinets, they're logging into FireMon. They're getting the API first. They run a report via API. They got the automated stuff going out, so their compliance people aren't bugging them. They're getting the time back to do the important things they need you to do. Questions. I wanted to leave you all about 10 minutes for questions. And this is an AMA, ask me anything. If I don't know the answer, I will find out.
All right. Lisa, thank you so much for that amazing presentation. Love the real world examples, real admin stories. That stuff is just fabulous. And can you hear me okay?
I can, and you're not choppy anymore. Technology has been conquered.
Exactly. For now. Okay. So I was going to mention, be prepared to pick up if my connection goes wonky again. It's, the way life is sometimes. And today seems to be the day that they're out to get me. So anyway, yes, we got some great questions coming in. Lisa, why don't we get to those now? First one up here. We are not currently involving our vendors in our incident response plans. How would you recommend we begin?
I would start with, again, look at contractually what the vendor is obligated to provide you in the event of an incident. Do those things, get those logs. And then involve them in the conversation. Maybe bring them into your tabletop. If you're not going to bring them into your tabletop, who's responsible for vendor management? If it's somebody in finance or compliance, bring them in and talk to your IT people. Get everybody in a room. If you talk to anybody in FireMon, I talk to everybody about everything. There are no silos here. Bring them in, have the discussion. If something happens, here's where your system interfaces with ours. What are the risks? What compensating controls can we put around it? What guardrails can we put around this to benefit us both? Because we don't want anything to happen. How can you help us? How can we help you?
Great answer. I mean, you've got a partner, right? You might as well take advantage. Absolutely. And I want to just one little bit of explanation. When you say tabletop, just for those who aren't as aware, you just mean a tabletop exercise, which is almost like role playing, where you say, okay, if this happens, what is our response? That's what you're talking about there, correct?
Absolutely. And actually, role playing is perfect because when I used to run tabletops as part of what I was doing, I would use dice. I would use dice for my random probability because everybody says, oh, we got to do incident response tabletop and the groans start. No, we get in a room, we get pizza, we get some pop, and I get the dice out. Let's go through our plan.
Yeah. And then do you get to be dungeon master too?
I do. And I generally advise to eliminate someone. If you've got someone in the company, I mean, I don't mean literally eliminate them. Let's not go there.
Right,
But
right.
let's say you have somebody with 26, and we had 26 years of experience with the company. There was not a question you could ask this gent he couldn't answer. Great, let's pretend he's on vacation. So for this particular tabletop, we're going to answer it all without him. Find out where your gaps are. That's going to show you where your documentation is lacking or where your knowledge is lacking more than anything else.
Yeah, absolutely. Great, great answer. I love that. Okay, next up, you've referenced compensating controls a couple of times. And what do you mean by that?
Yes, obviously I've been hanging out in the compliance space too long. Compensating controls is one of my favorite phrases. Basically, something's going to happen. How are you going to stop it? Compensating control, you're learning how to ride a bicycle. You know you're going to fall. Your compensating control is going to be a helmet. So if you, for example, need a process, you need this server to talk to that server, what are your compensating controls? It's going to be an access control list, maybe. There's a router in between. Let's put an ACL, access control list, on, so that server can only talk to that server. It's IP limited and can only talk on the 3 ports that that application requires. Limiting that to the bare minimum communication that needs to happen is a compensating control, where if you had any server could talk to any other server on any other port, you've got the Wild West going on there. So dial things down as much as you can and put guardrails around things.
Okay, excellent, excellent advice. All right, Richard wants to know, and we'll see if you can answer this or not. Is there a directory or rating service that grades vendors on their responsiveness to incident response and IR planning?
Oh, I don't know that there is.
Would that be a good thing, do you think?
That would be a great thing, and that would be something I would love to look into. I believe I can get a copy of these questions after the presentations. I will see what I can find for you there.
Fantastic. Fantastic stuff. Yeah, like you're saying, that would be so useful in terms of, comparing different solution providers. Okay, got a couple more here that look really good. Ryan wants to know, can FireMon really be a single pane of glass? Although you don't like that phrase, let's update it to Ryan wants to know, can FireMon really be a single lens for my second environment across prem and multi-cloud? If so, that would be amazing.
Oh, absolutely. We do Azure, AWS, and Google Cloud today. I know that Oracle is on the roadmap, but I don't know that it's 2024. We're looking at Oracle. Where things get prioritized is who's using them. I would say out of the people I talk to, it's probably 45% AWS, about 35% Azure, 19% GCP, and then a couple percent that are using, your DigitalOcean, your Oracle, your other clouds. Yes, we can bring that all in. We can give you not only that single lens, we can give you a couple cool things with respect to, like, you can look at Azure, you can look at an instance, and here's the publicly facing IP that's assigned to that. We can give you some additional information on that as well.
Outstanding, good information, and glad to hear that you handle the big three in terms of the public cloud, along with some others too, and others on the roadmap. So, okay, next up here, if our company currently doesn't follow a framework outside of PCI, is there one that you would suggest?
I know that the Ohio standard has suggested if you're going to use PCI and something else, look at CIS. Center for Information Security. A lot of that is device hardening, but there is also server things out there. There's things on even down to your mobile devices. Start with the CIS and start with the top 20 controls. Ohio's basically said you should be doing something. If you're not doing anything, look at CIS. Again, pick your framework and adhere to that framework and document it well. That's going to be your defensibility.
Absolutely. Okay. Let's see. Now this is probably an offline question, but this one is, can you recommend any white papers or ebooks on tabletops? First thing I would recommend is Googling, just from my own perspective. My company, we produced a series of blogs on tabletop exercises as well, and that would be for Actual Tech Media. So I would do a search on Actual Tech Media and tabletop exercises. From my perspective, anything else that you would recommend there, Lisa?
I'll take that one as an offline question too, because I'm not
Sure.
aware of any ebooks, but along with the blog that you all have, I've got a few other resources like that, some best practices in tabletops. And
Great,
I'd be happy
great.
to look those up and share those as well.
Okay, Lisa, this has been so much fun, and I'm very pleased that my connection has had out. So, last question for you today. You've generated quite a lot of interest in FireMon, just judging by the questions that we have seen here. So, if somebody wants to take the next step with FireMon right after this event today, what do you recommend they do?
You either reach out our website, firemon.com. If you have questions, you want to reach out to me directly. My email is lisa.wallace, Wallace, at firemon.com. I'll either answer your question. If you want to see a demo, I'll get you the right people for your area to show you a demo. And obviously, what we're talking about here is broad sweeping terms. Everybody's a little bit different. You want to talk about your specific use cases and how we fit in your environment. We're going to get you a conversation with the right people to look at it.
And as they say, operators are standing by, right?
Yes.
Lisa, I want to thank you so much for being with us today, for that fantastic presentation, for your insights in the Q&A. It was truly enlightening for me. I learned a whole lot, and I think the audience did too as well. So once again, thank you for your time and for educating us on what FireMon is doing in this general topic of such crucial importance. Thank you again.
Thank you so much for having us.
It was my pleasure. And folks, it actually happened again. The gremlins that had disappeared for a while just came back. So I'm going to try to get through real quick, giving away the Amazon gift card you see right here while my connection is holding out. We have one to give away, and the winner of this gift card is Courtney Cohen from California. Congratulations to you, Courtney. We will be in touch to get you your card. And folks, thanks for hanging out with us. You made it through, and I barely made it through. A little bit of stopping and starting. I want to thank FireMon for being here today and for making this event possible, for such a great presentation from Lisa. I want to thank all of you attendees for being here with us today, for putting up with my tech gremlins. I really appreciate that. And for your time and interest in the topic. It's been a pleasure to be here with you. I can't wait to see you in the next one with a better connection. Have a great rest of your day, folks.